Hey guys, and welcome to Tnashi's Movie Corner. And this week, we have X-Men Apocalypse, the third in the new X-Men trilogy coming out. Looking forward to it. Hopefully, I can see it. I've got a very busy week ahead of me, so I don't know. But I thought, well, it'd be cool to review the first in the trilogy because I, for some reason, haven't done that yet. I did review X-Men Days of Future Past already, so if you haven't seen it, go check out my review. And let's get into it. Okay, so X-Men First Class. It came out June 3rd of 2011, was directed by Matthew Vaughn, which was really cool already. And you had James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and Jennifer Lawrence in the movie. Which is cool. You also had Kevin Bacon and Rose Byrne. I'm missing people. I already know. Nicholas Hoult. So anyway, you had a lot of different people in this movie, and this movie was a bit of a reboot. It was a relaunch of this series because they had a couple movies before, like X-Men Origins Wolverine and X-Men The Last Stand, which did not do well with critics or the audience. And so this movie was to bring it back, and it all took place in 1962, or anyway, the 1960s, which was cool. It was, it was a throwback to the first stories that we saw in the comics, including the little take on the yellow suits, which was nice. So, and you had James McAvoy come in as Charles Xavier. You had Michael Fassbender come in as Magneto. And this was back when they were, going to be friends. So that in itself is an interesting concept to explore because we hear about it in the original trilogy. We don't see it as much. We see a little bit of it in the third one. And this movie does kind of go against that. But in any case, it was interesting to see that dynamic and to have these two people come in and take on these iconic roles in my mind for Magneto and for Xavier, and who were done so well in the original trilogy. I think that's one of the best parts of the original trilogy is having Patrick Stewart as Xavier. I think he embodied Xavier really well, so that's something that people really people took to it. People identified him as it. He was James Picard on Star Trek, and he became Xavier. He's the casting that everyone wanted to see. And on top of that, you had Magneto, who was brought to us by Ian McKellen, and again, another great actor who embodied the character of Magneto. And their relationship, you could feel in the first trilogy, and to have two people come in and try to fill these roles was a very difficult task. And I think James McAvoy, who I'd only seen, I think, in Wanted before that, which I enjoyed the movie, but it wasn't the best indication of his acting potential. And then, Michael Fassbender coming in, they did brilliant. They did brilliant jobs in this movie. And even though I'd say one of the negatives is that you don't focus on their friendship as much as I would have hoped for, being that this was the first movie to really start it, I loved the chemistry between the two. I loved the back and forth, and you really bought into it, even though it was a short time span. You really bought into their friendship and how everything played out, how they ended up splitting parts. And including that, you see both characters, you see their kind of beginnings in this, you see their origins. And there was a rumor going around, maybe more than a rumor, it looked like it was trying to get off the ground, where you had Magneto's origins as a standalone story. And what they did is they took, I guess, the idea of that and fleshed it out in this movie as well. And again, you get some of Xavier's beginnings too. So I really liked that you had those going in this film. That was a really good part for me. You also had Jennifer Lawrence come in as Raven / Mystique. And I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of hers in this movie. I like Mystique as a character from the comics. I liked the way she was portrayed by uh, Rebecca Ramon Rogen. I don't know how to say her last name. Sorry, but she did such a brilliant job of making Mystique. She was dangerous. She was sexy. She had this mysterious feel about her character. She just had this presence in the original trilogy, and that completely got taken away with this movie. So, and that's not entirely Jennifer Lawrence's fault, but the way her character arc she just didn't feel like she captivated any of the essence of Mystique's character from the original trilogy. So, for me personally, I felt that was a bit of a letdown, and I didn't think her acting was the best that it could have been. So, for that reason, I didn't like her character, and her character was throughout the entire movie, and the relationships, like I don't know what you even call it, because there were three different potentials, and I don't know, it just didn't work very well for me. Then you had Rose Byrne as Mora McTaggart. I again could be completely butchering that. It's been a while, but she did fine. She, being in there, she kind of she was her look at the government side of it, or one look of it, and her relationship with Charles and everything. It was okay. It wasn't anything great, but I was fine with it. Nicholas Hoult as Hank, though, as Beast, I really enjoyed that. Again, he gave me kind of the presence that Kelsey Grammer did, and I'm not sure how he pulled it off, but he did. He gave me that. He gave me the idea that this is a young Kelsey Grammer, that we'll see later on down the line. So I think that was another example of perfect casting. January Jones as Emma Frost. Her character was fine. She had a few more awkward moments, though, in the film for me. Some of the line delivery didn't work, and I felt like her character was ultimately forgettable, as Emma Frost tends to be, which is unfortunate because that character has been fleshed out so well in the comics and in some of the TV series that seeing her just come in and go, and I didn't really care. Wasn't cool for me, but he had some other characters in here too. I didn't really care enough about them. That's one of the biggest problems with this movie, is there's a lot of characters in here that I just don't care. There's characters they were introducing for the first time, and they didn't put enough time into building them up, and ultimately they're kind of pointless for the sequel. So I get it, but I wish there had been more to build into these characters so I could identify with them, so I could like them. Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw. I love that they, again, going back to Magneto, incorporated him as a villain for Magneto, and everything that he did at the time, fleshing out Magneto's past, was neat to see. But Kevin Bacon was a bit over the top, and maybe it worked because of the 1960s feel more than it didn't. But I did feel like his character was powerful, which is a good thing to have. And there was also a sense of victory when the final showdown happens, just because how things play out or what have you. So I thought all that was cool. I didn't completely buy it, but I am okay with his acting. I think it was fine, and it worked for the most part. But again, overall, there's some good action moments to it. I like the feel of the 1960s that played out well. I like the relationships that form between Xavier and Magneto, their friendship, and how it breaks apart, as we know it will. I like kind of the example, the showcasing of mutants getting to really use their power and come to know how to use their power right. The training bits of it. There's some funny lines throughout the movie too, which is nice. So I think there's also, like I said, a lot of good. There's a lot of good acting in it. There's also some acting I didn't particularly care for. So this movie for me wasn't amazing. It was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't amazing. Having a director like Matthew Vaughn on, I expected a better film than what I got. I mean, he's done Kingsman, that we saw. He did Kick Ass. So I expected there to be a little bit more out of this film, and the tone of it did feel off from the tone of the other movies, which could be fine, but it just didn't play as well with me as I would have wanted. So, having all that said, going into this movie, I liked it, but I didn't love it. There's quite a few problems, like I said. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna give it a 6.5 out of 10. Not a horrible movie by any means, but it definitely could have been better. I'm just glad that we did have this, because then we got Days of Future Past, which is one of my favorite movies. And this movie certainly had elements that worked well, and it did a good job of kind of reinvigorating the series, which was dying off thanks to, Origins and Last Stand. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it, but what are your thoughts on it? Hopefully you enjoyed this vid. Click that like button, share, subscribe to my channel, and watch my other vids. I do appreciate it. And until next time, peace.